You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I'm Doug Thorpe, and today we're going to continue our journey talking with successful business leaders and owners of companies, people that have been there, done that. My guest today is a guy named Jon Tsourakis. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Doug.
Yeah, so Jon and I have we've been on a journey together. I would say we've had some challenges getting this done, and for those of you that might be fellow podcasters, you know some of the technical laments you get into and binds. Last time Jon and I tried to do this, my landscape guys showed up right outside my office, and we were having particular sound incursion.
Super aggressive blower and weed eater, man.
Super aggressive, high power. I think he amped up the horsepower in that machine by about 3x or something. Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, we're here now. So Jon, is a bit of a tradition on my show. Let's start with you telling us a little bit about your background and your journey to get to where you are right now.
Yeah. So father owned a small construction company. He fired me. I was going to college at the time with this other guy, and he said, "Hey, you're going to school for marketing. I happen to own a marketing company with my father that we just started." So I went to work for them, and it was more traditional type stuff, and it was in the medical space. So a lot of like direct mail and phone call marketing, things like that, newspaper ads, that very traditional type stuff, and started dabbling into more of the digital there toward the end. And that's really what excited me. Got really corporate there, like to a brutal point, because it grew to such a state where they thought that was necessary. I would still disagree. Decided to leave there in the pit of the recession, and at that point started an agency. And over the years, that was in like 2008, and over the years done everything pretty much in the digital space, everything from web dev, paid ads, even tried a little bit of affiliate marketing. And in 2018, we were doing so well with one of our partners that we would send some of our web dev stuff. We decided to merge. And that's what we are today is Oyova. So that's been about 4 years. And yeah, it's been a very successful path in that space. And along the way, I've acquired some other small businesses and own another one where partners were involved, and that's also in the healthcare space. So yeah.
Very interesting. Do you think starting a business on the heels of the recession, was there a special chapter of learning you went through at that point?
There was. Looking back, I'm like, wow, that was such a stupid time to do it. But that is actually the best time to do it, because you're going to have to learn things in that type of pressure and just trying to separate people from their money. I mean, absolutely showing ultimate value when nobody wants to spend. And that's carried with me all the way. So now I believe we're in a recession. I've gotten this debate with other people, but regardless. I feel it's going to get a little bit deeper, but just communicating to my team that we have to do the 3 Ps: positive, persistent, pressure. We have to be very aggressive and showing value to our clients. And we have to continually communicate with them to keep the business, get the business, and keep driving it home to fight off competitors, because they're going to be just as aggressive as well.
So say those 3 Ps again.
Positive, persistent, pressure. And what I mean by that is you got to be positive. You got to be enthusiastic when you apply. You can't come off needy from, trying to sell from an empty cart where nobody wants to buy something. So you really got to bring the energy there. You got to be persistent. You can't look at what people are going to view and say like, well, I'm being a nuisance or I'm being annoying. You literally have to be persistent. There's going to be more of a mental block with people buying and purchasing things. And I'm not talking about selling things that people don't need. I'm talking about, all right, there's real value, believe in what you're selling. So you got to be persistent, and you're going to have to apply that pressure.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting lesson, and I think a lot of small business owners that I think of, when it does come to sales per se, they generally, make a face and recoil, and they go, "Ick," I don't want to do that because that's just not me. It's not what I like to do. But reality is, if you've got a almost any kind of business, there's got to be some variety of business development that goes on, and whether that's very transactional selling or larger relationship selling, it's an ever present.
It is, and I think a lot of people have been drunk on success of how easy things have been over the last 10 years, because selling in 2008 and 2009 and 2010 was very difficult. So people are going to have to stretch. But to anybody that's listening to this, that's thinking about starting a business, start it now, because you're going to know how bad it can get. And granted, the recession is different for different people. In 2008, it really affected a lot of construction and homes and whatnot, but it also trickled into tons of other places in the economy. So I would recommend, when it looks like it's the most bleak, is potentially the best time to start it, because you're going to be harder than steel when it's all over.
Yeah. For those that don't remember, the 2008 recession was typified by, national unemployment rate that was double digit. Depending on the city you lived in, it could have been as low as 8%, but it could have been as high as 18%.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the major metropolitan areas were hit really hard with that. There were a lot of, you're right, housing was kind of ground zero for the meltdown, but there were a lot of ancillary industries. Tech was hit hard then. And, a lot of layoffs, a lot of people who had never lost a job were, for the first time in their lives, 15, 20, 25 years into careers, being let go.
Yeah. Banking was hit pretty hard.
Banking was hit very hard. Yep.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of the same similarities with tech right now. I mean, and banking layoffs are happening as well. So just do the best you can with what you got and keep going.
Right. So talk to us about your kind of sweet spot for the work you do and the kinds of companies that are ideal clients.
I know it's never the fairest answer, especially when you're talking to somebody like, who do you like to work with? Well, startups are fun, right? So I'll start at the full spectrum. So startups are fun if they have a really cool concept and something that they believe in, right? Something that is so sellable that they could potentially even pick up the phone and do some cold calls. So those are always fun clients, and even some that are getting into a competitive space. So what we'll help them with is everything from developing their MVP in some cases, which is application or some type of digital product, and take that all the way through to marketing that. And we work with everything in between, all the way up to some enterprise clients where we've developed software. Because that's part of that merger that I spoke about was, I had a solid digital agency, had a partner that was doing a lot of web development and software development, and we decided to create an end-to-end solution. And we can do that. So clients that were on that side that they were developing like ERP systems for and things like that, we're able to sell digital marketing services, and vice versa. Clients that we were doing digital marketing for, we were able to sell them more technology services.
Interesting.
So the way that I filter it, though, is anybody that respects marketing and or what technology can do, and they like to pay their bills on time, and they're good people, are usually a good fit for us. And we just cost engineer budgets. We don't really have a minimum. Granted, there's minimums in there aligning to somebody's goals, right? Somebody comes to you and they want to build a skyscraper, but they only have, like $7 and some lint in their pocket. It's really not going to make sense. But we'll tell you what you can do for that $7.
Right. So this may be a wild tangent, but it's just top of mind for me because of some other clients I'm dealing with right now. Talk to us about this phenomenon called user experience. I think when people are, and specifically, I'll help guide clients I'm thinking of. They do have a service that is largely technology based, and so they've got a long-standing website. And there are elements of it that require the end user to go ahead and be issued some credentials and log into a certain screen and then move on through the process digitally online. And there's some real concern. And, when they get feedback, people say, I hate your system, or, I don't like your screens. And, that's not intuitive. What should have been here's over there, and blah, blah, blah. So what do you guys run into in that UX space, as it's called?
Yeah. So I think when you plan the design in a very thoughtful way, it makes things a lot easier. But yeah, when you have a product that is more expansive and there's lots of different features that are added, and it's not as simple from the start, user testing is something that we recommend for user experience. And when you get feedback, you don't always get the best tester. Let's be frank. Some of those people, it's like, did they stick their finger in a light socket and find out something tragic that morning? Because you get the reports and you're like, good Lord, I mean, what happened to this individual? Like, we didn't like steal their money or, slap any of their children. But yeah, no, it's something that we recommend. The interesting thing is not all clients will accept it. There's other ways to do it, right? Because it can be expensive. You have a body that's literally testing the way that a website performs. It's equivalent to sending somebody in a store and then having them go and look
mystery
for
shopper
specific products. Yeah.
And
there's other ways, right? You have different types of reporting tools that you can see, and you can see where people are struggling and heat mapping and things. But user experience in the digital space is something that if you're developing a product or a website, even if it's a brochure website, that should really be top of mind.
Yeah. And it does seem to be so touchy, and it quickly devolves into the, I'll use the word, and I'm not a professional marketer, and I'm getting ready to demonstrate that for you. It gets into the artsy realm and the creativity, and it's like, okay, well, you want the button to be bigger and fatter. Well, that's a personal preference, but I need to save some real estate, so we need to make it this size. And you get into all of those kind of discussions that really can drag a project out.
They can, and I think it's better to get a really solid plan up front and then figure out the things that are not going to be costly to iterate down the road, because that's where a huge saving is. So as long as you have a solid foundation that meets the function should always come before the design or any of the aesthetics to beautify something. You can create something that's fantastic, that is going to deliver on the promises to the user, that you can change along the way.
Yeah.
And there are other things you can do. So if there's, let's say that, one cohort wants the button to be bigger, for instance, you can test that. So you got A/B testing. That's one of the coolest things about technology. And you can see whether that's going to drive more clicks, create more engagement, sales, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is there a particular industry you do more work in than others?
Every time I answer that question, it typically goes another way. We do a lot in tech, right? So there's products, whether it's like reemployment services, or we do stuff in education as well. On the marketing side, we even do things like some home services, even attorneys, construction companies. So it ranges. I don't really have one specific niche that we focus on. We're like industry agnostic for the most part. But we'll focus some of our outbound efforts in specific areas. And the odd thing though, Doug, like we do that, and then it's like we get an inbound influx of like this other type of business. So which actually helped us during COVID. We were really well balanced. We didn't see a loss. We actually saw a 20% increase over COVID because we were in a very hedged, safe place.
Well, I want to go back to the point we were making, the mention of starting a business in the face of a recession. Related to that is the idea that if your business already exists, this is not necessarily the time to take out the paring knife and start cutting a bunch of stuff that you need to do. In fact, I've told a number of my clients, I think it's time to double down. You need to decide what you really can advance during this time, because a lot of your competition may well be doing just that. They may be taking that paring knife to the muscle in their organization, not just fat. And they're going to be paring down and cutting back and reducing service levels. And if you can see your way clear to expand, and while you're doing that, you just may pick up some really powerful market share that you didn't have before.
I agree. I think it's great advice. Yeah, a lot of people just they'll go straight to their marketing and sales budgets, and they're like, all right, we need to get rid of these people. I think those are potentially decisions you may have why didn't you make those decisions before? But I think the best thing to do is look at, all right, whether it's going to be the money you're spending on something or the people that you have on your team, what is it that they are supposed to deliver, right? What does that return need to be? And be realistic with the return. Some people are always looking for 10, 15, 20x. Yeah, I mean, in some markets you can get that, but I mean, you can get between like 4 and 6 and be, exceedingly happy. But just take a good look, just measure everything and measure your people. If you have somebody in there and you're not seeing the work that's coming in and they're just sitting there and your customer support staff, is there something else that they could be doing that's going to be a driver for the business? And if that person's not willing to do that, they might not be the best fit for what you're looking for right now, which makes that decision better. But I don't think people should just lay off their staff. I think they should really look at what they can do before they do that, because good people are hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the recent market, it is so incredibly competitive, and just for what it's worth, that's one of the anomalies in the arguments of where we really are as an economy, because the employment market is not typified by some of the measures and stats that usually go with recession, the definition of recession. So
yeah,
kind of waiting on that shoe to drop and see if, I mean, I do realize there have been some sectors that have made announcements about big cuts, and probably by the time this show hits the air, that shoe will have dropped one way or the other. And, again, I'm going to look like a fool for even going down that or climbing out on that limb, but that's
Those
okay.
Predictions.
It's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with work from home.
Yeah.
There's just, so at first there was all these reports that, employees are happier and they, commutes are down and work-life balance is in place, which I believe all those things were correct. But then when you're away from something long enough, your priorities begin to shift. And people look at anything that we're doing, it's a game. So if you can figure out how to game what it is that you're doing for a company, it's not necessarily you're trying to be nefarious with your employer, but you're going to figure out your work game to make it, to get the most out of it for you, right? Whether it's going to be money or it's going to be work. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. I think there's a lot of employees that have high integrity that are doing a fantastic job working from home. But I think there's also a number of people that do not have the personal management skills to be able to work from home. And depending on what their personal life is like, whether it's kids running around or whether it's their partner, husband or wife at home telling them like, hey, this is something that needs to be done, they don't know what those boundaries are. And I believe that's a lot of what we're seeing from a productivity standpoint.
Yeah. And, there's still company owners, leaders, and managers that are wrestling with what they really think about remote work, and whether there's still those few holdouts that are trying to demand 100% return to the office or return to the facility, and they're getting a lot of pushback still. They're hearing people vote with their feet, and they're seeing attrition because of it. But I think most are settling in. I was talking to a big company yesterday, and they said they've pretty well locked in on 3 days a week is the expectation for being in the office. And you can, in fact, pick which 3, but it's got to be 3, so.
Nobody's there Monday or Friday.
Well, that's largely how it's unfolding, and that's a good thing, actually, because that you bring that up, it is interesting that that was not necessarily in their lens of how they expected it to play out, but in fact that is pretty much exactly how it's played out. So they focus a lot of their team meetings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then worry about individual contributor type assignments on Monday and Friday, and they still, this particular company is one of those that They did install a type of monitoring technology in their desktops to see what people were trying to do. I mean, they're not snooping with live cameras or anything like that, but they can tell kind of how long you've been away from the login you were in. And
Yeah, and see, I don't want to. So we haven't forced anybody to come back yet, and I hope we don't have to, right? But I don't think they're voluntarily going to come in the office. And I've heard these stories from others. But oh yeah, people just wanted to come back to work. Well, do you have a policy where they need to work a few days a week? Yeah, we have it. Well, they didn't really volunteer. You applied some pressure, which I get. And I think it really does help. I was speaking to an industrial designer today, and for them to be able to touch the products and do those types of things for their design, it's very helpful. But I think we're going to see companies start with 3 days, and then I think it might creep up to 4, and I think some might even try to go for the full 5. I think it's just going to depend on what works for your company. I personally like being in an office. I like the change of state. Like, all right, when I go home, I'm going to do a hell of a lot less than when I go to that other place. And I like the collaborative piece that I've missed. So
well, and another dimension of that, there actually already have been studies where some are reporting among the younger generations, they're already expressing an awareness of the loss of opportunity by being in the office, and the opportunity to engage with senior leaders, more experienced staffers, to get some of that mentoring and guidance and extra coaching that they don't get real well in a total remote environment. And and I call that a consumer effect. You know, those frontline employees that are in that mode, you know, they're the consumers of that opportunity, and just in natural course of events, if they're in the office, they're getting that chance to see the big guy make his presentation, and how did he do that, and what did he do, what did he say, and there's just a reality of that in a lot of businesses, that's how you advance. You get exposed to that, and you learn and nurture and, you know, grow in it. And if you're relatively new in the business, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, but all of a sudden you're feeling like you're missing out. So it's that
they are, because
FOMO effect.
Yeah, they're siloed. They're isolated. Think about just all the. So, for instance, I think there was a book called, or maybe it was an article like peeing next to Ogilvy or something, with David Ogilvy, right? So there's these titans that, if you're working for specific companies, that you want to bump into those people because of what they offer. And just thinking back through my career, yeah, there were other people that that I would never work closely with, but added a ton of value. And you get familiarity, and you're like, hey, let's go grab a drink or something, or let's go do that, or you're just kind of BSing with them by the water cooler. So you now, if you're working from home, and I feel bad for this generation, you're literally waiting for people to reach out to you from an upper level. You have no random bump into somebody and, oh, hey, you can't add value to somebody's presentation just walking by. Or so I think there's a lot of loss there.
Yeah, and it's that. Yeah, I think about my own career path back many years ago when I was in banking, and I had built up a particular unit, and one day one of the very senior officers of the bank walks in my office and plops himself down and says, I want to talk to you about a new job. And I'm like, okay. And it's like, I have a need in my department. I want you to come over and be the head of it. And I'm like, why? And not to brag, but he's saying, well, I've heard about and I've watched what you've done here, and that's the kind of stuff I need for this department as my vision for it. So basically, I want you to come do again for me what you've done over here. And I said, well, I have no idea what your product is about. I don't know anything about your portfolio. And he said, that is the least of my worries. And he said, I have plenty of resources to teach you that, but what I don't have is what I understand you've done over here. And so there again, that's what I want you to do. Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And if somehow I had made all that happen remotely, would I have had that same exposure for this very senior officer to show up and come searching? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a magic lost, and possibly it'll be figured out a different way, and 100 years from now they'll be telling a different story because it's morphed into that. But I know it's going to be a hard trudge to get there, and a whole generation, if it doesn't change, is going to be negatively affected.
Yeah. Well, back to the entrepreneurial world a minute. From your seat and for the kinds of clients that come your way, what do you think some of the biggest top of mind issues are that small business owners are wrestling with right now?
I think the biggest that we see is a lot of people are trying to just drive their numbers up. So on the marketing side, they're trying to get the most bang for their buck, and it's our job to introduce them and give them the insights to show them how they can do that, and of course execute on those. So I'd say that's probably top of mind. How can they get in more sales? Because we're hearing about a recession from them a lot too. Hey, numbers are down, or we need this, especially when it comes to new clients. And then the other thing too that goes along with that is just how everybody wants to save. They want to save as much as they can. So I believe whatever it is that somebody is selling, they just need to be really transparent and communicate the value of it. All right, this is where that's going. We do it by hours. We're time and materials, regardless of whatever we're going to do. We're just going to show them, all right, this is how long it's going to take us, and this is what we need to get the job done.
So how do you traditionally try to build that value story or I guess traditionally it's called the value proposition? What do you try to pack into that when you are presenting to a company for the first time?
Try to understand where it is that they're coming from and just be really clear about what their goals are. And when we understand what it is that they're trying to achieve, because we're not going to take on a client if they want maintenance, right? So if they're just trying to replace something that's mediocre on their end and they just want like a stopgap that's not going to be a growth engine, then that's no interest to us. We want somebody that's going to grow. So aligning those goals with their budget. And we start that at the beginning conversation. All right, what is it that you want? Somebody, all right, we want to redevelop our website. All right, well, let's get into the why. Like, well, why do you want to redevelop your website? Well, we believe it's this. Okay, well, what data do you have just to support that? Well, we have the board is saying that we need a new website because we need to redo our branding. Okay, well, where are you with your brand? Just like really dig in and understand what the goals are, and then you can apply what the value is to that. And ultimately, the value is going to come down to the effect. All right, what is it that you're going to do that is going to have an outcome that is going to make them happy? And another important thing we do is we don't believe in surprises. So if this is your expectation, we're going to do everything we can to meet that expectation. Because when it comes to business, there are rarely good surprises. It's only bad surprises, right? So that's something that we also like to get clear with our clients.
Yeah. What about the companies that have, what's a nice word to describe this?
Say the bad one. Do it. Your podcast.
What about a company that's doing incredible work, but they've got a lousy story? They've got a lousy version of their own value proposition, and yet they're wanting to invest in doing some marketing.
So if they have a lousy story, I'm trying to think, because we used to, and sometimes we still do this, we'd sit down and it's kind of a braining exercise, and you go through kind of like a Simon Sinek's why, like, why do you get up in the morning, and you really want to get down to that. And some people are just like, well, I just want to make money, or I want to do this. It's just like, well, that's really not something we can sell there. So I don't know if we're going to be a good fit. So I think if a company doesn't have a very good story to tell, something that's really engaging about one of the founders, then or they have this really cool purpose, you just completely have to flip that onto their customers, and you have to tell the story from their customers' point of view. And you can do that in a myriad of ways. I mean, the old-fashioned way was just essentially testimonials, but you can pull those out into different customer journeys, depending on whether you're going to use video, and then you can separate somebody in a digital space, whether it's going to be on their site. Reviews are another great way to do that, where you're continually highlighting those in case studies and all these things that you've done. But yeah, like, I mean, you see it all the time where it's hard to sell certain businesses. For instance, like if you have like medical services, and even banking, right? There's only so many stories you can tell there that are like, well, we care. Well, you better care because my grandmother's in the hospital. I mean, it's like that's table stakes. And then banking, oh, we're here for you. Oh, yeah, we're going to take your money and do it in a better place. Yeah, well, your interest rates don't show that. So there's all these like fun things that you have to do with it. You could even take like insurance companies, right? If you look at insurance companies, what is their communication strategy right now? It's complete randomness for the most part.
Yeah.
And it works. It's engaging. And if you do enough of it, it's going to be a little bit sticky. So there's every client's a little bit different, but to answer your question, you gotta dig into what their goals are, what the customer, or client needs to see, and articulate in a certain way that is going to be as honest as you possibly can. There's going to be a little bit of embellishing because we're marketers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as it should be. And I think as an owner, a business owner, you hope your marketing guy can help you craft that story and put whatever twist or uniqueness into it. And you touched on banking, and boy, that I vividly remember the days sitting around the table in my banking career when the marketers were going, "Oh God, what do we got to do next?" This is, I mean, you got a checking account, you got a loan product. What else are we going to do? And the bank where I was, we happened to have a shtick that we were business bankers. Our focus as a bank was on small business, small and medium, and just anything business. The way we portrayed that, we were walking around on job sites, we're down at a shipyard, or we're out on an oil rig, or walking through a warehouse, and talking to the owners, talking to the forklift drivers and stuff like that. And well, that was a really radical departure from traditional banker in his white shirt and burgundy tie sitting behind a desk. And
that's a good
worked.
Story.
It worked. It was a huge success, and we were an incredibly profitable bank for doing that.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
And then it was kind of, oh, by the way, I can open my kid's savings account at the bank. Sure. You can come in and do that. Yeah, we can do that for you. But sure.
Not what we're looking for, but yeah, absolutely.
We didn't lead with that by any means. Whereas the guy down the street, the big bank down the street, was clamoring for that.
Yeah.
We sell Girl Scout cookies. Well, okay, nice. That's good. But
and then you found, it's in a sense a niche, right? You went to the commercial side. I mean, it's a wide niche, which is smart. And I think Seth Godin said it, where you have to niche till it hurts. And those are things that we'll look at to find a value proposition and also a differentiator. Differentiators, though, I mean, in banking and all these others, that's what that was. It sounds like at the time that was a differentiator. You guys focused on the commercial. That can be very difficult, and I think a lot of people will struggle with that. And that's where, if you can't find one, find a niche where it is different in that niche.
Yeah. And back to my original question, one of the client companies I'm thinking of, they were predominantly a tech-based solution, but it was custom for businesses, and it was hard to spin a story about what exactly they did, and what could they do. And they did a lot of really cool stuff, but it was very hard to put into a cohesive story that made any marketing sense. So theirs, and I spent a time as a kind of a business advisor to them, I said, honestly, I don't think mass marketing is your answer. I think you've got to get really busy on relationship marketing. You've got to do a whole lot more with the people who already know who you are, and get them to write reviews, film some testimonials, get some of that kind of stuff going on.
9 times out of 10, that's always going to be the best approach. If they don't have a good base from a relationship standpoint, then they're not going to be able to grow to the level that they want. A lot of companies are going to get hung up there. For instance, any of those insurance companies or banks or whatever, that's going to start on the relationship side. The people that are just waiting for the business to always come to them, it's not, there's some exceptions to it, but it's not something that I would say is a growth driven company.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think shore up every channel you can and you will be a dominator. When somebody tries to treat it like a buffet, where they're like, oh, well, relationship marketing, nah, that's not for us. We're just going to do this. Then it's not going to be effective. Whether you're going to be Amazon at that level, they had relationship marketing. They were building strategic partnerships. They were looking for places that are going to funnel them business and then better pricing. I think that's an inherent component to any very successful company's mix, for sure.
Putting that out. If you had to do it all over again, Jon, what would you do different?
Probably would have got a job in finance, Doug.
No, I can promise you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think I would have made it. If I had to do anything, I think I would have actually, I would have focused more on the relationship side at the start, rather than all the inbound marketing and SEO and digital stuff at the beginning. Now, granted, we got really good at that, and I think it was very effective, but I believe we lost out on a lot of potential business. So I think continually networking and joining peer groups and making sure that you're making the right connections, that is something I don't think anybody should ever lose. If you're resting on that, people are what companies are made of, and that's what is going to bring you opportunities. I think you're setting yourself up in a substantially better position. So I think that's something I should have worked a lot better at the start.
Now, one thing I want to insert here, you, in addition to your core business, you organize and facilitate a mastermind, right?
Yep.
And so talk a little bit about that. Where did that come from, and how typically does that run?
Yeah, so it's actually where I met my business partner about 10 years ago. I met him in this group. I got a cold call from this guy one time, and he said, "Hey, I heard you're decent at marketing. I got this little group together. I'd like you to join." So I was like, "All right, cool." So I joined, and then they would do just this yearly event, and I would go to this yearly event, and it was pretty cool. And he handed it over to another guy that just didn't want to do it, and he said, "Hey, you seem to like this. Will you take it over?" And that was also around like 4 or 5 years ago. And so I went ahead and took it over, and I made some changes. So we still do the yearly event, which I think is one of the biggest draws, but we also stay in contact via biweekly calls, and we have a Slack channel, or a Slack group rather, and it's for technologists, marketers, agency owners like myself. And the idea is that it's a true mastermind. It's not necessarily just trying to come up with this group think. I love differentiation in there. Homogenization works in a lot of different other factors, but I think in business it can stifle innovation. And so that's what we do. We just look for business owners that are tech focused, marketers, a lot of agency owners, and we try to help each other solve each other's problems, and then also a little bit act like a victims group, talk employees and about clients and things of that nature. But it's very successful, and there's a lot of happy people that are in it.
So if I may ask, what's kind of the profile of the company that is represented in that group? The owner, where have they grown their business to?
I'd say, there's been so many like purchases and mergers of some of these agencies in there. There's some that just started with a few $100,000 that are well into the mid, millions. There's some agencies in there that are, I'd say close to 90 million. And then there's some other companies that hover right around the million. And then some people, and I know there's some other groups that have this philosophy that you need to put all these businesses that are the same size because they have the same problems. There's some truth to that, but the downside of that is business cycle. And what I mean by that is a new business that starts out, they're going to be scrappy, and they're going to take on risks that no business that's been successful for 10 years is going to take. And the things that they're going to introduce to that group can be jet fuel. For instance, like they're going to experiment with some AI things, and they're going to do all these other little crazy things. And of course, there's something to be learned from the business that's been around for 5, 10, 15 years. So we have a good mix. And I think what it comes down to there is just the moderation, right? Where you're just making sure that you're setting up good topics and you're not letting somebody hog it, and also sharing from experience. Because if you're making $400,000 a year and you're going to brag about, whatever your other career was, and you're going to try to, how would you manufacture advice? It's not going to be effective. So just be really gentle in shutting those people down and making sure that it's a successful group for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jon, I think this has been great. We're going to put a bow on it and wrap it up here. Tell folks how they can get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more.
Yeah, best place is to find me on LinkedIn. It's last name is spelled Tsourakis. First name's Jon, Jon. Send me a request if you want to chat about something or, partner up on a project. Join the Digital Mastermind group, which is digitalmastermind.com. Happy to help.
Great. And we will have all that information in the show notes, folks. So drop down and take a look at that if you want those links and get a hold of it. And one last time, Jon, thanks for sitting in.
Doug, thank you so much, man. Happy we could do it. No blowers or weed eaters this time.
Yeah, that's right. We got all the noise abatement accomplished, so it's a good deal. Well, folks, we are going to shut this down. I do want to remind you, we do have this episode over on YouTube and a channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there and you can see the video of what we've just covered, or maybe you're going to see it for the first time. Who knows? But share it with your friends. Leave us some comments. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. For now, I'm going to sign off, say goodbye. I hope to see you again real soon.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.